Hello and welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and through my seminar, coaching, live therapeutic music, and sound healing business, Wings Unfolded, I help people to identify and move past anything that's keeping them stuck. And I feel strongly about these stuck moments in life because I have certainly experienced a lot of stuck in my own life. And, because of that, I really love hearing other people's stories about being stuck. And because I'm still learning about that process of being stuck, I'm hoping that we can grow in uncertainty together. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I recently tried something new. As you may know, I opened up an office space in my hometown where I live right now. And I was very excited about starting this new project in my life. Very excited about opening it and getting things for the space. And then as I was in the space, I made some realizations that it wasn't necessarily the direction that I wanted to be going in. It wasn't necessarily fitting. I just felt like maybe I had made a mistake. And, when things don't go the way that I expect them to or want them to, it's really easy for me to start spinning stories about, I'm doing it wrong, or I should have done X, Y, or Z. Worst of all is when I start telling myself that I should have known better. Those kinds of stories can be really difficult, really challenging, and not necessarily helpful. And so, when my expectations aren't really being fulfilled, or I'm not seeing what I want to be seeing, I can end up feeling like I made a mistake. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way yourself. You've been going down a path and all of a sudden it's not looking the way you wanted it to look. And it can feel like you've made a mistake. So a mistake is an action or a judgment that is misguided or wrong. That's according to the dictionary. But sometimes we as human beings can decide that something is wrong when it just wasn't necessarily serving us. And there's kind of a difference in those things, because what's wrong for me might not be wrong for somebody else. So how wrong is it? So, I know that's kind of like mincing words in a lot of ways, but, how do we reconcile the idea that I try to live by, this idea that there really are no mistakes in life? Everything happens for a reason, for us, not necessarily to us. So how do you reconcile the feeling of having made a mistake versus the belief that there really are no mistakes? So that's kind of what I want to unpack today on the show. And I don't like how my camera is, so one moment, I'm just going to fix that. There we go. So, briefly, here's what I realized about my space downtown, just to give you a little bit of context. My space is a little bit too small for what I want to be doing. I want to be doing more group work, group coaching, or group sound baths. And that requires a lot more space than one room, which is what I had before. So, as I've been kind of making this realization, these were not really thoughts I was having when I decided to open up that space. I was working under a little bit of a different vision for myself, but then as I got going, I started seeing myself more doing group work. So, I could have kept trying to make it work in the space that I was in out of like a determination or self preservation for the original plan. But at the same time, I decided that I needed to surrender, my focus word for 2022, to the awareness that I was really not in the right space for me and what I wanted to create. And it was time for me to pivot. What's a pivot? A pivot is when we change directions, even though we haven't completed something that we started. And to be honest, not finishing something is really, really hard for me personally. I like to see things to their full fruition. I like to take them to the, end point. I think it's being a musician. I would hate to end a piece of music right in the middle. That would drive me bananas. So, in life, I don't like to not finish things either. And at the same time, sometimes you do have to pivot, because if you don't, you can end up burning yourself out, trying to force yourself to do something that you no longer internally feel motivated to do or energized to do. So, using the knowledge that I gained in the short amount of time that I was in the space downtown, I use that knowledge to kind of energize myself to make that pivot happen. Because while pivoting sounds really simple to do, it's not. If you've ever had an experience in your life where you've started something and then all of a sudden you realize, wait, this isn't what I want to do. I want to go in this direction. It can be hard to just all of a sudden change your mind, because you have to confront the idea that maybe all that time and energy and money that you put into the original idea was just a waste. Oh my gosh, did I waste all that time and energy and money? But at the same time, that you're feeling like maybe it was a waste, that can bring up a lot of feelings of shame and embarrassment. And I've certainly had to confront a lot of those feelings for myself too. A lot of people, to avoid having to face the shame and embarrassment of having to change directions, they'll just stay. Again, it's that idea of saving face and following through with something that you said you would do. It's totally understandable. Who would want to feel like they wasted a whole bunch of time? And I know that it took me a while to shift my own mindset because of, these same feelings. I was only there for 3 months. Maybe that's not enough time to really see what I would need. I did spend a lot of money getting my space set up. And, then there's the what are people going to think of me idea that I have to face as well. All of those thoughts could potentially keep me from facing and accepting something that I really believe is going to be a better fit for me. So, how do we start to reconcile that feeling of making a mistake versus believing that there are no mistakes in our lives? So the first thing that needs to happen is we have to really acknowledge and validate our own feelings that are coming up. We can't spiritually bypass them. We can't rationalize them away. We can't ignore them, push them down. We have to really allow them to be there, name them, shine a light on them. And then it's time to forgive yourself. And how in the world do you forgive yourself? Well, one of the best ways to forgive yourself is to really remind yourself that at the time that you embarked on any experience in your life, you have the knowledge that you have in that moment. You can't know what you don't know in any given moment. So any action, any decision that you make, is backed by the knowledge that you have at the time. You can't really fault yourself for not knowing what you know now. And one of the things I like to do is, really recognize that having gone through whatever experience of, feeling like I've made a mistake, what happens is you can actually start to feel gratitude for the knowledge that you did gain, because you wouldn't have known that if you hadn't gone through the experience. So, for example, for me, I wouldn't have gotten myself to the point of realizing that I needed a bigger space if I hadn't experienced what it was to be in that smaller space and to see what it was all about. Once I could really see it and try it on, I knew what I needed instead. It's kind of like trying on clothes. If you're going to go and shop for new clothes, sometimes it's hard to just judge by look whether or not it's going to fit you. It's not until you go into the fitting room that you can actually try it on and see whether or not it works. So that's kind of what I was doing in this situation too. So seeing it from that perspective helps me to grant myself a whole lot of forgiveness. Well, of course I wouldn't know what I don't know until I actually experience it. So no matter what happened, in my experience of this, I got myself further down the path of where I ultimately want to end up going. So that is truly a win in my book. So let's say that you've gotten to this point of, working on whatever mistake is going on in your life, and you're like, yeah, that's nice. Okay, so I've acknowledged my feelings and I've forgiven myself, but, I still don't really understand this whole idea with, there's no such thing as a mistake. Well, now is the time to take a look at your history, and specifically your history with mistakes. Know your history. So our history sets up patterns in our life that keep playing out over and over and over again until we learn what we need to learn from it. So, for example, have you ever asked yourself, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep finding myself in this situation? What am I doing that these relationships keep playing out in my life? There's a saying from Winston Churchill, that those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And that not only plays out on the larger world political scale, but also in our personal lives. If we don't learn from our histories, we will repeat it over and over and over again. So our past really contains a lot of shadow aspects that come out whenever a new life experience starts to shine a light for us to see them. And what I mean by a shadow aspect is anything in your life that hasn't been healed. That experience that you had that went unhealed will keep repeating itself until you do something to heal it, until you at least recognize and acknowledge that experience happened for you. So really acknowledging that a pattern is repeating is shining a light on it. That is becoming aware of it. And when you can become aware of it, that's when you can start to make decisions about whether or not you want to repeat your pattern or if you want to try something new. Sometimes it's hard to know what a new pattern is. And that's where talking to other people, hey, how would you respond to this situation? What would you do if you were in my shoes right here? And you can listen to them share what they might do. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it, but you can use the new information that you have, and you can start to imagine new ways of going about it. So, for example, here's my history with mistakes. I am the youngest in my family. I have an older sister. And if you are a younger sibling, you know, or you can identify with the experience of always looking up to your older sibling and wanting to do things just like them and thinking that they're so amazing that they can tie their shoes and they can spell and they can create things that your little hands aren't ready yet to create. And so as you grow up, you just see everything through this lens of my older sibling knows so much more than me. They are so much more creative than me. They are so much smarter than me. Whether or not those things are actually true, that is a belief that I developed as a young person, and it went with me throughout my life, where I would start to see that pattern of, if I couldn't do something as well as somebody else, then I might say, oh, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never going to, no matter how hard I try, it's not going to be good enough, because that's how I felt as a young person. And when you're looking at life through that lens, that's kind of all you see until you can shine a light on that unhealed past. So what I had to do for myself was say, wait a minute, how true is it that I can't do X, Y, or Z? Maybe I just need to learn a little bit more about it, or maybe I need to practice the skill a little bit more, or maybe I need to talk to somebody else about, getting a little bit better at it, or maybe I'm just fine. Maybe I'm making up stories that I can't do something as well as I need to be doing it. So that's an example of how you can work with a shadow that you recognize for yourself. And your shadow might be something a little bit different, but the best way to find out about your shadow is to look at your patterns and see what's happening there. When you look at your patterns and you start to heal those experiences from your life that went unhealed, what's amazing is that you can see all of the life lessons that you have had to heal that past experience. And yes, one could look at all of those patterns as mistakes that you've made, but on the other hand, it really isn't. It's really just an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself. So knowing your history is super important in that process. So let's check in. We've acknowledged and we've validated the feelings that came up around a mistake. We've forgiven ourselves and recognized that you can't know what you don't know whenever you embark on anything new in life. And we've sifted through our history and gotten to know the unhealed experiences or the shadows in our life. So there's only one thing left to do in this process of recognizing that mistakes don't really exist. And that's that it's time to take action on what the mistake has really taught us in this moment. So the more informed and conscious you are when you're deciding on an action to take, the more empowered you're going to feel when you take that action. So taking action, when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be like a really big action, like a grandiose. Yes, you're right, Kara. It is really hard to not be so judgmental towards ourselves. Totally. That's we thrive sometimes on our inner critic. But at the same time, we can look to our history too to see where that inner critic is trying to keep us safe, where it's trying to, get us back to a place that we feel comfortable with. And knowing that we're playing out our history, we can say, nope, I want to do something different this time and see what happens. So, what an action might be can be as small as just withdrawing from what you're doing, right? Like just, okay, I'm going to take a break from this and see what comes up for me maybe in 3 days. I love the 72-hour rule. Maybe an action is having a conversation with someone and seeing, hey, what's your take on this? What's your feedback? Maybe an action is big. Maybe it's quitting a job. It's okay, I can't do this anymore. This is limiting me, and I've been doing this comfort zone thing forever, and I'm pretty sure that if I keep doing the comfort zone thing, I'm gonna keep having these questions of, is this really what I want to be doing? Or are these the patterns that I keep wanting to have in my life? Or maybe it's getting a cat or a dog. For a lot of people, animals can be the answer. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there now at this point. But your action depends on what you're going through and what you think that you need in the moment, depending on that, perceived mistake that you've made in your life. Maybe it's apologizing to someone. That can be a really powerful one if you feel like, oh man, I think it was a mistake to say X, Y, or Z. I think it was a mistake to do this, and maybe I'll check in with this person and apologize or see how they experienced it. So I am in my supposed mistake that that I'm dealing with right now. I am sitting with my feelings, and I am, forgiving myself. I am pivoting. That's a big action that I decided to make, to pivot in a direction that feels more right with the direction that I actually want to be going in at this point with my career. So it's not easy. I make it sound like, whatever, I'm pivoting. No, this was at least a week's worth of sitting and contemplating and writing and doing a live show to force myself to formulate these ideas. So I want to express gratitude to all of you for holding me accountable, for taking action on my own places where I have work to do. This is part of that process, absolutely, and you guys are witness to it, and I am forever grateful that you're holding space for this, and hopefully you're getting some ideas too. That's like the icing on the cake. So anyway, I just have two more thoughts on mistakes. The first one is, I can't learn from your mistakes, and you can't learn from mine. Have you ever had anybody say, oh, let me give you some advice so that you can learn from my mistakes? While that is really well-meaning and well-intentioned, at the same time, it's just not true. We cannot learn from other people's mistakes. We might need to make the mistakes in order to learn them. That process of making the mistake is what shines a light on the work that we need to do in our own lives. And our mistakes are likely going to be very different from the mistakes that our friend or colleague or brother or sister or whomever has made in their lives. Our mistake is designed specifically for us. So that's also something to keep in mind, and again, they're not really mistakes. They're just, opportunities for learning and growth, but mistake is really an easy word to use. Anyway, so, I've definitely had people share with me insights and knowledge, and it's been really helpful. At the same time, I know that I've still made my own mistakes, even though I had a lot of people helping me. And to be clear, if you see that somebody is about to trip on something, you should absolutely tell them that they're about to trip on something. That is not the kind of mistake that I'm talking about here. So just wanted to clear that up. Anyway, the second thing that I want to finish, close this live show with is, you are made. by your mistakes. I think you've already gotten that from what I've said so far, but I just want to really highlight that your mistakes make you. They make you who you are. You've got to embrace that and love that. You would not be who you are today if you had not made all of the perceived mistakes that you've made in your life. So, maybe with that perspective, as you look back on your life and you see, oh my gosh, if I hadn't made that mistake, I wouldn't have met this person. And this person means so much to me in my life now. Or if I hadn't made that mistake, then I wouldn't have known about this, or that I could even handle this experience in my life. And knowing that is so empowering to me. Sometimes it takes looking back on the mistakes we've made in the past to give us the courage to make the mistakes in the future, knowing that those future mistakes are going to make us who we are down the road. So, I think that it would be wonderful if the next time you make a mistake, try to have that in the back of your mind so that you can, instead of dreading the process of dealing with the mistake, you can embrace it and really get as much out of that experience as you possibly can. So here's what I would recommend doing if you're interested in working with anything in your life that you feel like is a mistake that you're going through. Get out a journal, and you're going to answer some questions. The first question is, what was the mistake? Just write about it. What happened? Why do you think it's a mistake? The second question is, what feelings come up for you as you think about this perceived mistake that you made? The third thing is, what information were you working from versus what information did you learn along the way? For example, the information I was working from in opening my office space was, I need my own space downtown so that I can be more visible, I can be more part of the community, and it's going to help me focus and concentrate on what I need to do for my business. The new information that I gained is, well, that I need more space in order to do what I want to be doing now. So, that helps me keep this experience in perspective, knowing what led me down that path and now what's leading me through my pivot. And then the next question is, what historical patterns were working behind the scenes in your reaction to your mistake? For me, it's my worth, my self-worth that I am working on. I know there's a pattern of feeling unworthy a lot of the time, and I'm definitely working with that now. And then finally, what did you ultimately learn about yourself in this mistake process, in this mistake journey? So those are some questions that you can consider if there's anything that you're feeling like you are making a mistake with in your life. And remember, I'll say it again, your mistakes make you. You would not be who you are today if you had not made those mistakes. So I want to celebrate that with you. And if you're ready to see it as a celebration, you may not be there yet, and that's totally okay. Take your time. So I hope these ideas resonate with you. I'd love to hear how you're shifting your perspectives. Thank you so much for watching. I am always so grateful for your presence. Please like or share these videos with friends or family or anyone you think might benefit from watching them or hearing what I have to say about some of these topics, or even just hearing my stories about, all the stuckness that I've dealt with in my life. I'd love to hear any feedback that you want to share with me. You can stay tuned to any updates on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My videos are always posted to YouTube and on my website, wingsunfolded.com. And if there's something you'd like help with related to a life transition, feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to talk with you about that and possibly work with you. Or you can, book a session directly from my website. That's a new feature these days. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Have an amazing week and take care.